Later that evening, the guilty few who attended the supper were not made to feel quite so guilty after all. As it turned out, Abbess Elinor had an announcement, for which she summoned all the abbey beasts, excluding the Dibbons. Of course, Salome was there, helping Marianne to set the tables. As the creatures seated themselves, any beast who wished could snatch a morsel or two from the supper platters, and this misdemeanor went unnoticed. Rising from her chair, the abbess proclaimed,
"Creatures of Redwall, I give you permission to prepare a summer feast."
Salome, who was carrying a bread platter, came close to dropping it. She exchanged a look with Marianne. By now, both young maids knew better than to cheer, squeal, or leap about in the presence of the abbess. But Marianne's eyes twinkled, and Salome realized that she had heard Abbess Elinor correctly. A summer feast in Redwall Abbey! They scarcely heard the abbess's speech on how she would not have allowed this nonsensical frivolity at all, but for a certain friar who had nagged her repeatedly about the subject, and who had behaved, in her opinion, like an antsy Dibbon. Nor did they tarry behind to hear the rest. As soon as all the leftovers had been laid out, Marianne excused herself and took flight, and Salome dashed after her.
"Oh, Marianne,"
she breathed.
"a feast! What's a summer feast like? Will we have a load of games to play? Will there be contests like the ones I heard about? Will there be lots of food? Will the abbess let us eat any of it?"
The squirrel maid laughed aloud.
"Of course we'll have some food, and of course the abbess will let us eat. You talk like some beast has been starving you."
Salome made a gesture of impatience.
"You know what I mean, for God's sake."
"Hush! The abbess will eat you and set you to scrubbing floors. Wait till we're in the chamber."
Samuel had already retired to the bedchamber that he would share with Salome. He was sitting upon the edge of his new mattress, admiring the cool, white linen sheets, when the door swung inward and Salome and Marianne burst into the room. The young creatures scrambled up onto the bed, joined paws, and began to bounce up and down, scattering quilts and head cushions everywhere.
We're going to have a summer feast.
We're going to have a summer feast. We're going to have a summer feast.
Going to have a summer feast.
Samuel glanced from face to face.
"Summer feast? What in all the moss flower are you two yelling about? Stop it! You're wrecking the room."
Marianne pulled away and jumped down from the bed, breathless and giggling. Samuel had been inside of this abbey for hours now, and this was the second time he'd heard any creature laughing aloud.
"Oh, heavens! Supper must be almost over. I've got to go and help Friar Jerome tidy up, or the abbess will come after me. See you in the morning."
Within seconds, she was gone. Salome clutched her older brother excitedly.
"They're going to have a feast, Samuel. A summer feast, like the ones the dormouse told us about."
Samuel hugged her back a little, smiling at his sister's eagerness, before moving her off. He watched as she nestled her cheek against the plump, downy-filled head cushion.
"Are you going to stand there all night playing with that pillow, or are you going to sleep with it?"
Salome chucked the head cushion at him.
"You never want to have a bit of fun, Samuel."
Samuel fired a pillow back at her.
"If sitting up all night and not waking up till noon tomorrow sounds like fun to you, go ahead. And the abbess can tear you to pieces with those dirty looks of hers and a speech about laziness."
At the mention of the abbess, Salome remembered the question she'd intended to ask Samuel.
"Samuel, what does unique mean?"
Samuel gave her an odd look.
"Unique? If something's unique, it's special, like nothing else in the world. Why?"
Salome came to sit beside him.
"Oh, so that's what it meant. Now I know why the abbess got all mad at me when I—"
She cut herself off, realizing that she had blundered. If she had clapped a paw over her mouth, she couldn't have looked guiltier. Oh, hellgate, Samuel thought.
"When you what, Salome?"
Salome squirmed a bit.
"Don't start shouting at me, Samuel. The abbess asked me if I could see God, and I told her what I figured he looked like."
"Salome, what in hell's gates?"
"It ain't my fault I thought of him as an old badger in the sky with a beard. I was fair mortificated."
Samuel was thrown into utter confusion.
"You thought of him as what? And mortificated?"
"Aye, mortificated. That's how the mother abbess said she'd feel if any of her creatures was as ignorant as me. Nice word, eh?"
There was a note of pride in Salome's voice, which Samuel promptly crushed.
"It's mortified, Salome, not mortificated. Right now, I'm probably the most mortified creature in all of Mossflower.
Salome flinched.
Seriously, Salome? A badger in the sky? I'm sure I taught you better than that.
Salome blinked at him.
But I don't remember you teaching me anything about God, except for that bit of a prayer you taught me when I was a kid.
It was Samuel's turn to cringe as he realized that Salome was right. He had never taught her much in the way of religious lore. He had never tried to teach her to read or write either. He was just barely literate himself. Samuel could never have imagined his sister, a little ferret maid growing up to be some taut-faced, habit-wearing, prayer-chanting creature. He snickered at the thought. And he had never expected her to become as clever as any bookwormish woodlander youngster either. But even in the back of the settlement, he'd always been vaguely aware of the fact that most of the other little ferrets, weasels, and stoats were ahead of Salome in many ways. Samuel had always figured that his baby sister was just a bit slow. On one occasion, Samuel had to read a story to little Salome about a powerful badger king and an evil stoat. And every night, for seasons afterwards, Salome would besiege Samuel just as he was preparing for bed and beg him to read the story again. As far as Samuel could remember, he never did so, but this had not discouraged Salome in the least. And then, when she was 6 years old, they had fled the settlement and had left all the books behind. Now Samuel began to wonder if he was to blame for Salome's slowness. He had never ever wanted his sister to be slow.
Samuel?
Salome nudged him.
Samuel, are you mad?
Samuel flicked a quilt at her.
Why would I be mad? Shut your silly little trap and let me go to sleep. I'm right worn out from having to scrub them confounded pots. You can box my ears if you ever hear me talking about that Martin the Warrior again.
Salome fell asleep long before Samuel did. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Samuel reached over and stroked the young ferret maid's head. In about a season, Salome would be the age that Luzi was when she passed. And Luzi would have been a young adult ferret within a few seasons, with the death of her father, the only parent she had known, and one of the plague's earliest victims, had left her with a perpetual childlike bewilderment in her eyes. Her intuition had belied those eyes, however, for she had seemed to sense that Samuel was planning to flee with Salome, and only waited for the first opportunity. And she had sensed that he would urge her to flee with them.
Don't go now, Samuel.
She would say, unexpectedly.
Don't try me off now. Wait for me.
And, like a little fool, he had waited. Samuel uttered a mirthless laugh. Like the oaf he was, he had sat about, watching bump after ink-black bump appear beneath her fur, had watched her grow thin and haggard. How long had Samuel obeyed her and sat waiting, like a dim-witted dog waiting for a walk? Of course, till the day he had entered her den and found fleas forming hills over her corpse, and beneath her head cushion, a scroll of papyrus that, upon being unfolded, read,
Luzi, wrap the ring in this letter and leave it beside your cot for me. You have no need of it, sitting around here until he dies. Then, you must wait. Within days, I'll have found a safe place for us, and I'll send for you and take you out of this sick pit. Signed, Jamar.
It was then that Samuel had remembered the weasel Jamar, who had vanished some days ago and whom he had assumed was dead. He also remembered that the chief had announced the disappearance of a ruby ring only weeks before, but other than to wonder how a creature could make a broadcast of a ring while beasts were dying, he had thought little of it. Then Samuel had retreated to his den and, hours later, found a flea bite on his wrist. That was the night he fled with Salome. Samuel shifted the sleeping Salome so that he could pull the edge of the blanket from beneath her.
Wait for me.
If they had waited any longer, the only safe place they would have had was a cozy berth in dark forest.